put together what I thought would be an almost perfect recipe or formula, for a group, and I think we've come quite close to that. And I mean, just the way we work and stuff. I mean, there's like the nucleus is me and Mick, and then we bring in like different members around us, different musicians and stuff. And the touring band's always different, Although I mean, there has been some people that have become quite regular now, like Steve White, who plays drums for us, and DC Lee and does vocals. But it's still the lineup's still quite sort of floating, and I suppose it works a bit like the way that some jazz groups maybe work, when they bring in different people and stuff. And the other thing we wanted to do was we're not into sort of doing 6 months on the road and all that stuff, It's not like a rock and roll band at all. We don't work that way really. And we try and pick and choose the concerts as much as possible. This has been the longest time we've been out on the road, for a month, doing Japan and Australia. Yeah, sorry.
So that's great. Well, I'm first hearing the new album, Our Favourite Shop. That comes across as being a very positive album, really beautiful melodies. Musically, it's extremely pretty, and even dance oriented in places. And yet, when you actually listen to the lyrics, it's perhaps the most hard hitting album I've really listened to as a single project. Are you now using your music as a means to get your political message across?
Well, I mean, I've always used songs to say something. I mean, I've always had something to say. Quite strong points to make. I think Our Favourite Shop is a lot more direct. That's because I think our politics have become more defined, and the more things we've been involved in England, more different political campaigns, the more educated we've become and more politicised we've become. And I think that's just reflected in the album really. And also, of course, the situation in England as well. I mean, there's so much to say about it really.
Yeah, it is a fantastic album. You're very committed to a number of issues. I'll ask you about a couple of those. I guess firstly, the miners' strike. How were you involved in that?
Well, I wasn't involved in it.
No.
Really. Indirectly. I mean, we supported the miners, what they were doing. They were fighting for, the right to keep open certain pits, and we helped in the only way that was possible. We've done a couple of concerts, benefit concerts, and we also put out a record called Soul Deep under the name of the Council Collective with a lot of different singers and stuff, which raised about £10,000 initially, and there should be some more money to come from it, more royalties, which we sent to the miners, the Women Against Pit Closures, which is all the miners' wives group. And we sent that before Christmas, which was quite good. We've also been involved in C&D quite heavily, which is nuclear disarmament thing, party in England. And more recently we've been involved in this thing called the Youth Trade Union Rights Campaign.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, which is, I don't know if people over here know about that.
So it's Youth Trade Union Rights Campaign, yeah.
And it's, there's these things in England called youth training schemes, which are really like a bit like slave labour, and the young people on them, and it mainly affects 16 to 17-year-old school leavers, and they don't really have any basic union rights at all, and they get paid a weekly wage of £26, which is obviously nothing,
How does that compare with the dole?
The dollar.
The dole, no, the dole.
Oh, the dole.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that much more really, and they're still doing a full week's work as well,
So
there's no guarantee at the end of that. It's not like an apprenticeship or anything, because there's no guarantee of getting a job at the end of your 6 months training scheme anyway. So I think it's a bit like open season for the bosses, a lot of bosses as well. Because
so what, they can have you for 6 months, they can have me for the next 6 months, and just gradually go on with it, but never actually give anyone a permanent position.
Yeah, some people do come out and get jobs. I'm generalising, but I think it's just, I think it's quite a threatening thing to, for the whole union movement really. I think it's important for us to keep hold of that, the initial fundamental idea of unionism.
So how have you been involved with that? Have you been...
Well, we've done a benefit concert, not a benefit concert, there was a national demonstration this year, and earlier on this year, which we played at the South Bank in London with Billy Bragg and a few other bands. And we've lent our name to it as well. We've been down to 1 or 2 public press launches things down at House of Parliament. And just generally supported it that way, We also give them some money.
Drawing attention to the problem. International Year of the Youth. You're president in Britain?
Yeah, co-president supposed to be.
Well, then how did that come about?
I don't know, they couldn't get one of the royal family, so they chose me.
So what do you do?
I don't know, I think it's a bit of a washout in England. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but there hasn't been much backup from the government at all. Very little funding and no support whatsoever. There was a national press launch for the IYY, and there was no representative from the Conservative Party at all, you know. And yet all the other leaders of the other opposition parties all turned up for it. So, I mean, you know, there's not that much support really for young people, I don't think, from the government.
Are there many other groups of musicians, you know, like Style Council, Billy Bragg, who are as committed as you are to these issues in Britain at the moment? When I listen to the top 10 in Britain, it tends to be very dreamy sort of music, dance-oriented, a lot of it, and it doesn't really say as much as it has done over the past.
No.
At present.
I think, I mean, there are bands, you know, that do a lot of things and are quite committed, but I think you'll find them more smaller bands, you know. There's very few top 20 or top 10 or chart bands really that are prepared to get involved, because obviously, you know, you do get tarnished a bit if you do get involved in these things. And you know, obviously their management or their agents or record companies don't want that to happen. I mean, it was the same thing with like Soul Deep. I mean, we didn't sell that many records, as you know, as many as we would do if it had been the Style Council and it had been unconnected to the miners' strike.
Yeah.
And it didn't get radio play and stuff, and some shops refused to stock it. So obviously you're going to get that kind of opposition, you know.
Britain also has a huge problem with young people taking heroin. Just how big is the problem there?
Well, I think it's quite widespread, and I think the most frightening thing is that there's a lot of this cheap heroin called skag around, which people smoke, you know, or chase as they call it. And you know, that's the most frightening thing, and a lot of really, really young kids get involved. I mean, in some cities, even as young as like 9 or 10, you know. And I mean, they are trying now the government are trying to sort of crack down on it. But as usual, you know, they always come in like 2 years or 3 years too late, I think, in some ways. And I don't know what can be done about it. I mean, it's hard to reverse that situation. What you can try and do is warn people, but it's difficult, I think. I think it's like a general kind of mentality, though. I think people have lost some kind of value on their lives a little bit, you know. Find themselves a bit valueless.
Nothing to look forward to, I suppose.
I think that's got quite a lot to do with it.
But do you think it is that people are well enough educated to realise that heroin really is very addictive? Or do you think there's still people that still think, oh, you know,
well,
what happened to me?
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, you know, exactly. People still think that.
Do you think you'll ever get into politics as a profession?
I don't know. Hard to say, really. I wouldn't mind getting involved. I wouldn't mind getting involved with the English Labour Party if I could have some kind of input into it, which I don't sort of rule out. You know, it's a possibility. I'm not too optimistic around these things.
Thanks for talking to me, Paul.
Okay, thank you.